Forced to work from home by your employer? Laid off or feeling depressed at home? Do you want to make money working from anywhere? We'll show you how to do it from your couch. It's time for another episode of the Work From Home Show. Coming to you from their homes in Austin, Texas and Tampa, Florida, here are your hosts, Adam and Naresh.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Work From Home Show. I'm Naresh Vissa with Adam Schrader. Shout out to all our homies, homeboys, homegirls, home trans, all the work from homers out there. Today we have Jim Huling on the show. He is a managing consultant for FranklinCovey's 4 Disciplines of Execution and New York Times bestselling co-author of the book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution, Achieving Your Wildly Important Goals. We've touched a little bit on Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and we even had on a previous guest on our podcast, Todd Davis, who you're probably familiar with, Jim. And so we had such a great interview. It was one of our most popular interviews talking about the 7 habits, and we just love FranklinCovey's work, what they do. So we thought, let's bring on the managing consultant, Jim Huling, and another best-selling author. So, Jim, without further ado, welcome to the Work From Home Show.
Thank you, Naresh. First of all, I'm really honored to be a guest, and I wasn't nervous at all until you just told me I had to follow Todd Davis, which is not an easy task. He is literally one of the finest human beings I've ever known in my life, and a great speaker and author. So I hope I can bring an A game that will match the standards already been set.
Well, when Todd Davis came on, he talked about the 7 habits of highly effective people. But I want you to talk about your book, and your book that did extremely well, The 4 Disciplines of Execution. So let's go over those 4 disciplines. What are they?
Yeah, thank you, Naresh. And what an honor to be able to do it. You know, if you don't mind a bridge statement only before we jump into the 4 disciplines, Dr. Covey wrote the 7 habits, quite a few years ago. And Todd Davis's life, my life, millions of people's lives were changed by that book irrevocably for the better. I mean, it's a tremendous. It may very well be the greatest personal development book in the history of the world. I don't know. I am a little bit biased, of course, when I say that. But when we say the 4 disciplines of execution, we really like connecting that these 4 disciplines have grown out of the root system Dr. Covey planted. I mean, habits 2 and 3 really set the stage for what has ultimately now, many years later, become the 4 disciplines. And I feel like it's an important thing for your listeners to know that there's a continuity in this larger story that's at play about how to have a great life and a great career. But having said that, thank you for allowing me to make that connection. The 4 disciplines of execution are really quite easy to understand. And for anybody who's listening today, let me give you the simple version first. And then as we go through our conversation, I'm happy to add some depth to each of these items. But instead of thinking about 4 disciplines, I would ask all of your listeners to think about 4 principles. Those are easier to remember. So in other words, these disciplines are simply the ways of implementing things that Dr. Covey spoke of as principles, meaning they're always true and they're always timeless, and strategies may change, but principles remain constant. So the very first one is the principle of focus. And it's based, Naresh, around a really simple idea. And I have to laugh a little bit when I say it, because I think all of us struggle with this idea, no matter how simple it is. And that is that if we're not careful, we will miss doing the important things in our lives because we are spending so much time focusing on the urgent things in our lives. And you see what I'm saying? Right now I have, 30, 40 voicemails to return. Hundreds of emails have already come in today. A number of responsibilities I have as a global managing consultant. And all of those things feel really urgent. And if I try to just attack all those things at once, what I'm probably going to do is put off the things that are important but not so urgent, up to the point where likely I may not get them done at all. So I sacrifice the important for the urgent. So that's why focus is so critical. And that's really discipline 1. Discipline 2 is the discipline of leverage. It's a really happy one for most people in this day and age because we're all, tired, I guess, Naresh. I don't know the right way to say it. Everybody I coach and everybody I speak with feels as though they are laboring right now. They're carrying a heavy load, and maybe part of that's emotional, and psychological as well. But the idea of leverage should be appealing in times of great stress, because leverage means let me find the few things that produce the greatest result, and let me go all in on those few things. So think of it this way: if you have a goal you're trying to accomplish, you might start out by thinking of 100 things that would help you achieve that goal. And probably all 100 things are good things to do. But it's fairly likely that a very small percentage of those things are going to produce most of your results, sort of like a version of the old 80-20 rule. So in discipline 2, we say find your leverage by identifying the 1 or 2 things that really are going to give you the greatest impact, the things that would produce most of your results, and put the predominance of your energy into those things. So 2 things so far: focus and leverage. Discipline 3 is equally easy to understand. Naresh, if you don't mind, I'll make a small confession. Discipline 3 is my favorite discipline, so I tend to give it a little more energy for some reason. But hopefully everybody will like all 4 of these disciplines. But
sure, go for it. Love
discipline. Thank you. It's almost like people say, "Do you have a favorite child?" And you don't want to answer that question, but maybe you do.
Depends on the day.
Depends on the day and whether they're teenagers or not, at least in my experience. So the discipline 3 is the discipline of engagement. So think about where we are in the story so far. Focus means you've identified the one thing that matters most, and you're going to give it your predominant energy rather than scattering your energy across 1,000 other things. Discipline 2 is to get really smart about how you achieve that goal. So you find a few points of leverage and put all of your energy into those. Discipline 3 is about gaining engagement by the way you keep score. And if you like, we'll spend more time on this during our conversation today. But just quickly, one of the greatest learnings we've had over the last 10 to 12 years is that the way you keep score changes the way you play. Now, you'd see this most clearly if you're talking about leading an entire team of people where you've got, 10, 20, 30, 50, 1,000 people that you've got to get engaged in something. But just think about it in the workday. The average person gets up every morning sort of determined to get through the day, but only the lucky few have this experience of feeling that it's a privilege, that they're excited about what they're about to do that day. Well, some of that has to do with the way in which you keep score. So we talk all the time in the 4 disciplines about creating a compelling scoreboard, something that means something to you, or if you're doing this in a business setting, something that means something to your team. And most of the time, that comes down to the simple fact of ownership. Now, if it's your own scoreboard, you're running the marathon and you're training a certain number of miles a week, and it's on your refrigerator, and every day you run, you put a green check mark, and every day you skip, you put a red X or something. That's pretty motivating because that's highly personal. In other words, a one-person scoreboard means you own it by definition. But what if it's a team scoreboard? What if you've got 50 people looking at that scoreboard, and you want them to not just see it as their job? You want them to, you want them to look at it like it was a game. You want them to play like they were trying to win. Well, one of the keys to that is to let them create a scoreboard that they own. Right. So a compelling scoreboard is something that's simple. It's got a clear metric for scorekeeping. And in a second or two, anybody can look at that board and tell whether we're winning or losing. That's the basic recipe for discipline 3. And then last of all, discipline 4 is the discipline of accountability. So if you're writing anything down while you're driving or whatever, in fact, if you're driving, don't write anything down. Just remember it for later, both hands on the wheel. But if you're keeping any notes at all, you could just have 4 words written down so far: focus, leverage, engagement, and accountability. That's the formula of the 4 disciplines of execution. And then to finish, this last one, sometimes people have a reaction, an emotional, Adam, reaction to the word accountability. I don't know if either of you has a boss. I think you are the boss probably right now. But can you remember having a boss? If your boss called you in the evening and said, "Hey, can you come in early tomorrow morning? You and I need to have an accountability meeting." There is nobody that's going to celebrate having gotten that call, right? Most of us are going to worry about that.
That doesn't lead to the wake up where everything's good and excited
to
take on the day.
It doesn't, right? In fact, maybe you're not feeling so well the next day, and you need a day off. I don't know. But the problem there is that we have learned over time to associate negative consequences with the word accountability. But accountability is really an incredibly positive word if we view it as the driving force that makes people want to be at their best. So one of the things we do in discipline 4, the discipline of accountability, is that we not only recognize that every single person has an accountability to someone. Now, for most people who work in organizations or something like that, they have an accountability to their leader. But even if you own the business, you have an accountability to your customers, to your shareholders, to your investors, maybe even to your family, whoever. So you have that sense of accountability. But what a lot of people don't have is an accountability to the people they work with. I hope I'm making sense by the way I'm saying that. So everybody is clearly aware of their accountability to their boss, because their consequences are usually there if they fail in that accountability. But very, very few teams around the world, or even individuals, will intentionally establish an accountability sort of horizontally to each other. And our greatest finding, honestly, over the last 10 years is that type of accountability drives more results than a vertical accountability, me to my boss. It's an astounding thing. So if you've got a team of people, you work to create the sense that they are accountable to each other. And the way we do that in the 4 disciplines is we just have everybody every week say out loud the 1 or 2 most important things they're personally accountable to do this week. They say it out loud for everybody to hear, right? And then they come back 1 week later in that same meeting and they say whether they did it or not. It's a powerful exercise at driving accountability to each other. And if you're just doing it personally, like let's say Naresh is going to run his marathon and Adam and I are his accountability partners, he needs to commit to a certain number of miles every week or a certain amount of training every week. And he needs to be on the phone with us every Friday morning for 10 minutes and just tell us whether he did it or not. And you might be able to feel it even from the way I'm describing it, but no matter what, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, he's going to be thinking about that Friday morning phone call to us. Even though we're not his boss, he's made himself accountable to us. And that sense of accountability will drive his performance. So there's the recipe for extraordinary results, focus, leverage, engagement, and accountability. And I hope that kind of gets everybody's appetite warm for maybe some of the more details we might talk about a little bit later.
Yeah. So going to your first discipline of the focus, I read that you said that your research shows that only 15% of employees actually know their organization's most important goals. My question is that because only 15% of companies have their most important goals, or is it a communication problem between, the 100% who have the goal and their employees?
Adam, that's an awesome question. And I'll tell you why that's a real sincere compliment from me on that question, because 12 years ago, when we started this work together, there was a huge proportion of organizations who simply lacked goal clarity. They either didn't have goals, or when they set them, they were sort of aspirational or nebulous. They weren't measurable, all kinds of things like that. Now, fast forward, we're today talking about the 2nd edition of the 4 disciplines of execution. So this is our brand new edition, 30% new content. It's been run out this year. That's not the state of the world. The state of the world today is that most organizations have goals, and most of them, have learned to be clear and measurable in those goals. But one of the things that has really happened is that they either still have too many goals, or, as you said, they under-communicate them. So take the first case, for example. I love it when I go in to consult with an organization, large or small, and they start off by saying, hey, Jim, you can sort of skip discipline 1 because we've really got that. We think we've nailed the goal-setting part of our equation, and you might want to just jump ahead to discipline 2. And I always think, guys, maybe they have, how do I know? So I was like, wow, wonderful. Can I just see your goals? And then they'll bring out a set of PowerPoint slides on which they've articulated 10, 20, 40 goals. I was with a team last year in London who had 97 goals. Will you let that sink in just for a second? 97 goals.
Now close your eyes and list all of your goals without looking at the paper, right?
Exactly, right? You can't even name them. In fact, if I've got time, can I just tell you the funny ending to that story? I literally was incredulous, and now I was also very polite and respectful, but I said to them, 97 goals. How do you ever achieve 97 goals? This is a true story. A very distinguished British executive said to me, we don't achieve them, we just talk about them. Which is probably what happens to everybody. You have 97 goals, all you're actually doing is talking about your goals. But to bring it back to this point here, if you're trying to focus on everything, the harsh reality of your leadership is you're really focusing on nothing. And our own research, Adam, you probably saw this right on the page where you saw this other point made, was that if you get up to the point where you have between 10 and 20, you are highly likely to achieve none of them. You'll work incredibly hard. You're chasing 20 objectives across a year, you and your team. There's no question about the effort you're going to give, but you're probably not going to achieve any of them, because when you spread yourself across that many initiatives, your contribution to each one is really small. It's all you've got, right? So you've got a certain amount of energy left to give after your day-to-day is taken care of, and you spread that across 20 things. You're sort of, filling the ocean with a dropper. It's just all you've got. Well, at the end of the year, you've given everything you have, but you probably haven't hit any of those metrics. So the principle of focus is really clear. And then, Adam, just right to your point to finish is even if you have 20 goals and you try to communicate them, you can't get them out. So see how the two answers are really two halves of a whole. The only way to have a team of people who really knows, like wake them up in the middle of the night and ask what the goal is, and they know the answer, is to keep it down to one main goal and everything else is secondary.
Jim, let's talk leadership now. So what leadership mindsets do you think are required for success and strategic commitment?
Yeah, Naresh, what a great question. You sort of make me want to slow down a moment and really, I hope I can give an answer that equals the quality of that question, my friend, because I think that's the question of the day. And, both of you, my sense of you is you're probably younger in your careers than I am. I'm sort of in the third act of my career, 44 years. I've been, including being a CEO for a number of years, and then now 13 years with FranklinCovey. And I reference that only because the answer to your question has changed, in my view, over the years. When I started working, which in your view would feel like 1878 or something, but it really wasn't that far back. What you had predominantly was an authority mindset. Leaders gave the directions and people followed, and if you didn't work there anymore. It was authority driven. And then over the years, we also went through another phase that I would really refer to as engagement driven. In the 90s and then in the last decade as well, there's been a huge amount of emphasis placed on engagement. Engagement's a good thing. Having happy people is a good thing. It helps with retention, helps with attraction of talent, but it doesn't necessarily produce results. So now we're kind of in this last era, which is a people focused. And I think this is the best. I think this is the best era that I've seen in my entire leadership career. And the reason I start my answer in that way is that the organizations that I consult with, which is hundreds and hundreds around the world, the ones who are predominantly focused on people. And when I say that, I mean attracting the right people, investing in the right people through growth opportunities and education and experience, recognizing and rewarding people who make a disproportionate contribution, providing opportunities for growth and advancement. That's what you mean by people focused. They end up getting everything that the authority-focused leaders wanted, which is a high commitment to high performance. They also got everything that the engagement period tried to bring, which is people who actually enjoy their work. They have a sense of winning. But you have to have a certain mindset to be able to have that. And I could go on too long about this. I'm afraid I may already have, but if I may, just a closing sentence is, if you're listening to me today and you're thinking, well, he's just saying all my people need to be happy. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that if your people become the most important thing, you will do the things that will end up having people who are happy, but they'll also produce results. And to have that, you have to have this mindset. You have to be, in today's world, you have to be willing to be transparent. Yeah, you have to be willing to share with people not only what we're supposed to do, but why we're trying to do it, why it matters, why should they care, why should they go beyond their job. We've got to be transparent, but we've also got to treat the talented people we've hired as though they are capable of making a contribution. And I'm nervous now because I may be talking too much, Narish, but I just want to make this point, if I might, really clear. It's, the most ridiculous thing we ever do is hire wonderfully talented people and only tell them what to do. Never ask them what we should be doing, and still today, that mindset is out there. So you've got to have that engagement mindset that says, I really value your contribution, and I really want you to have ownership in what we're about to do. So if you have a contribution, let's make it. Be part of the discussion as well as the implementation. And then last of all, and I have to say, I learned this from Marriott, the Marriott Corporation, which has been one of my biggest clients for 12 years. I learned this, which is the founding principle of that organization, which is let's hire the right people and let's treat people right, and they will take care of everything else in our business. That whole corporation, as you know, was founded on that principle, and it still proves true today. They're the largest hospitality company in the world, and they believe it. And that's a good lesson for all of us, for a people-focused culture.
So if we're in an environment, let's say people are working at a company and maybe they're even in a slight management, and you talk about, they used to be the authoritarian leadership style and then it's shifted into this people-driven. If you still, let's say, I have a company or I'm in a company where, somebody is maybe, 70, 75 years old and still in that authoritarian kind of mindset, what are some things that you can do? Maybe, let's pretend that, you hired them as part of your company. How do you help them move from the authoritarian mindset into the people-driven mindset?
Gosh, Adam, what a great question. And by the way, thanks for saying 75, because I'm 67. So that you're talking about an older person now, in this example. So I love your question, man. And I would just say to everybody who's about to listen to this answer, you can decide later whether you agree or disagree, but would you let this go in? Because it's worth pondering for a moment. So if I was that person and you've asked a wonderful question, exactly, Jim, tactically, what can I do right now to be a leader who is in pace with the times? Because, we're in the midst of what is loosely being called the Great Resignation. I mean, Adam and Narish, I'm sure you've reported on it, and I'm sure you've had other people. It's amazing. By the thousands, people are resigning, or they're saying, I don't know if I'm coming back or not, And so in the shift like this, the organizations that are going to win the competition for top talent are the ones who have the answer to the question that you've just asked. That's how timely it is. So three things come to my mind right away. Number one, people who are hired today don't want to just take orders. They want to be part of the solution. So there used to be a sort of hierarchy, you don't get to be in the brainstorming meeting until you've been here 5 years or 10 years or until you're a director or a vice president, and that you need to just get rid of that idea, because some of the best ideas today are going to come from the most junior people you have, because they're frankly more in touch with the marketplace than people who may have been, in a leadership role for several decades. So adopt a leadership style of involvement. Let them be involved. If you want people to own the responsibility, they want to be involved in the creation of the plan. So open up the doors. Don't just have a meeting where 3 senior executives get together and decide what we're going to do, and everybody else's job is to follow orders. Get people involved in what they're doing. Second, and Adam, I'm afraid this is going to sound a little platitudinal, and if everybody could see my face, you'd see sincerity. I think it's one of the most powerful practical leadership practices in the world, which is be willing to recognize and reward high performance. It's just such a cultural shift for leaders to see somebody doing something well and to develop a regular practice. In this case, if I was role playing with you, Adam, I would say, hey, Adam, great job on that project last week. You guys came in right on time. The solution you came up with is going to really help our company. And I know there's going to be something formal later on. I just wanted you to hear first from me. You did a great job, and it means a lot to this company, and it means a lot to me. Thank you. Well, the people coming in the workforce today, they want to work for somebody who does that. And in my day, Adam, that was a rare thing. I mean, you literally wrote "Dear Diary" that night. He actually said I did a good job today. So it was almost unheard of. But today, that's what fuels the engine of these young, talented people. So second, create a culture of recognition and appreciation. And then third, and I hope if anybody's hanging with me, if you're older, a leader, these are things that you're going to feel are a little bit radical. But it's to create this culture of loyalty. The companies used to love to talk about we're a family. And then as it turned out, so many hard business decisions had to be made that seemed like a hypocrisy a little bit. We're not, as far as I know, we're never firing my brother. He's here. Right? So we're not a family because that's not how this works. So in other words, you created then a period of cynicism sort of about that. Well, now it's this question of loyalty. Loyalty is really what people wanted anyway. They didn't want to be part of a family. They wanted to know that they could trust the people they work for, and they wanted to know that they are in turn trusted by them to do what they're supposed to be doing. So you have to work at that. You have to make it clear to people that you do trust them. You have to, as Stephen Covey's son often teaches now, you have to extend trust to people, and you have to make them know that they are worthy of it. And you set the expectation for high trust environments. So those three big shifts are the things that I think all the companies I'm consulting with now, I see those as the recipe for creating a culture that will attract all of these people who are saying, I'm not going back to that place. And what I'm looking for is the kind of place this guy on the show this morning was talking about. I hope that was good. Adam, did I answer your question well enough, or are there some things you would have added to that?
No, that was great. And I was just going to say the last thing you were saying just makes me think about so many of the businesses that I've either worked for or with, where I've just seen it's almost like people hire talent and then they forget why they hired them.
Totally.
And it's like, oh, well, why did you hire me if you don't trust me to do the things that I can do whenever you hired me?
So right, Adam. And it almost makes a person feel like, would you even know me? Did you really vet me when you hired me? Because I am fully qualified to be part of that. But they'll say, well, you've only been here 3 years. You won't be invited to a meeting like that until you've been here at least 5. Seriously? Who made that rule up? That I have intelligent contributions to make at 5 years, but I don't have any right now. Seriously? And that only has to happen once or twice in a culture like this. There are more jobs than there are people right now. So certainly in most of the major sectors. And so right now the job seeker is in the driver's seat, and they have the opportunity to say, I want to go to a place that helps me grow and thrive. And so the onus is on companies to become those kinds of cultures that draw in people who are talented and, ready to make a contribution. And they're only going to do it if they come in and feel not that they're allowed to make CEO level decisions. Nobody expects that, but they want to be valued and part of the dialogue. So I love the way you said it, Adam. And I think that's exactly right.
I want to talk really quickly about technology because we've talked about different leadership styles, older leadership styles, adaptation, but technology, especially due to pandemic, post-pandemic,
right?
It's changed the way that we conduct business, and it's changed the way that we lead. So how can we utilize technology for compelling executive scorecards or scoreboards?
Oh, yeah, great. Thank you. That's a great question. I just say broadly as a context and then directly answer your question, Nerys, is, I think broadly, if you're a leader at any level in any size organization, you're listening to this wonderful podcast today. I hope you feel it's wonderful. Certainly the episodes that preceded mine were wonderful. I would offer you the contextual thought. Don't resist technology, embrace it, go with it. There's so much energy being lost right now with, I would have to say, more senior leaders who didn't come up in a technologically focused time, still feeling frightened by, or at least resistant to, the things that technology can do. For example, there are a lot of organizations that don't allow people to be seen doing something on their cell phone during the workday. If you can believe it, those companies still exist today. Goodness gracious, what are we talking about? Why not embrace that and you turn it towards something that works for the business? And so one of the things that we've done at FranklinCovey is all of our products related to execution have app-based scorecards. So in other words, the team can create the scoreboard, and they can personalize that scoreboard any way they want, but they access it and update it on their app, which gives you a tremendous capability, all throughout the day. If a new milestone is hit, or a project's completed, or a revenue goal is exceeded, to blast out that message, and even publicly to be able to create this recognition culture through messaging and highlighting, and the kinds of things that are very normal in the social media world are still a little bit revolutionary in the corporate world when they're done, but they're just as powerful, and they motivate people to want to be at their best. In fact, if you think about the things that I outlined for you, those three things that I think are what should be the focus right now in the period of the Great Resignation, technology is an enabler of all three of those things. Even to your point, Adam, earlier about who knows the goals, can we really execute on a goal that we can't even remember? Seriously, right? Well, what if you had on the phone in your hand, you had a constant reminder of not only what the goal was, but how the company is tracking toward that goal. And you had celebratory comments and expressions of appreciation and recognition for high performance right there on your phone, So my point, and I may be hammering it too hard, is to see technology as the enabler of all these things that we've talked about today, and waste no more energy resisting it. Don't walk around with the assumption that if a person is looking at their phone, they're not working. If you've still got that idea in your head, you really belong in 1893. You need to go back. you have lost touch, right? How do you know that person is not looking at the last 17 weeks of performance trends and trying to think of a suggestion for their boss about how the team might improve? So even that thought is the problem, is an indication, the indication of the problem. Get with it now and see it as an enabler. That's the message I'd like to leave with everybody.
Now, when you talk scorecards, is this a scorecard that every division has their own and then the company has one as well, or is it just one scorecard for the whole company?
When you use the word company, Adam, which is a great way to make this a clear answer, we're really talking about every single team. Every single team in the 4 disciplines methodology has its own goal. And that goal, we refer to it as a wildly important goal. So often abbreviated WIG, a WIG. Every team has its own WIG. And if you think about that concept for a minute, every team has the one goal that matters most, and they also have a sort of day-to-day collection of operational metrics that they're also accountable for. It's not that they only do one thing, but they always know what's most important. Every minute of every day, they know the most important goal. Well, all of those goals at the team level align to the goals at the company level. So take a very fast example. If you were running a hotel, for example, you might say, well, the most important goal in a successful hotel is the experience of every guest. And you wouldn't get any genius credit for that, because that's the most obvious, most important goal in the world, right? When the guests are happy, things are usually going well. And when they're unhappy, things are not going well. But what about the team? What about the goal for the housekeeping team? What's their goal if the goal for the hotel is the guest experience? Well, in a lot of examples, they might say, well, our goal is really going to be cleanliness then, because the higher our score on cleanliness, the higher the overall score for the hotel would be. And you could carry that example out and say, the goal at the front desk is a speedy and friendly check-in. You could say the goal in the kitchen is extraordinary food quality. In other words, every team could have its own goal, and on their scoreboard is their goal. But those goals align to the goal at the top. So now, every single week, if we say on your app or on your phone, right, every team is able to celebrate whether they are winning or losing at their part of the game. So they have their own celebration and they have their own sense of ownership. It's their game. But you also have the hotel able to celebrate at the end of the day or the month or the year, whether they're winning on the big goal, which is the overall guest satisfaction for the hotel. So we call that goal alignment. And as long as if you do it right, the person in the lowest responsibility job has a clear line of sight to the way they do their work impacting the highest goal in the entire organization. If you can establish that line of sight where every single person can say to themselves, I may not have the biggest job in the company, but I know my job matters, because if the rooms aren't clean, the big score at the top will suffer. So how I vacuum today matters. How I prepare this dish at the lunch menu matters, because it all impacts that big goal. That's how you create an entire workforce that is engaged in an off-the-charts way. And of course, from that comes extraordinary results.
That's Jim Huling, managing consultant for FranklinCovey's 4 Disciplines of Execution and New York Times bestselling author of the 4 Disciplines of Execution, Achieving Your Wildly Important Goals. The website is jimhuling.com. That's Huling, jimhuling.com, and FranklinCovey.com. Jim, any final thoughts you want to share with our listeners, or anything else you want to promote?
Well, Naresh, thank you. I was a little bit afraid my answers had been too long. They may have been, and so a final 60 seconds. I'm grateful for that. If I just left everybody with this one thought, that even though we're in a time of the Great Resignation, most of the Great Resignation is being driven by a lack of sense of fulfillment, a sense of making a difference, a sense of doing work that matters. And so I see it as an indication of a transition where people are saying, I don't want to just trade hours for dollars anymore. That's an honorable thing to do, but it's also the lowest bar you can set. I want to do something that makes a difference. I want to feel that I've gotten better at what I'm doing. I want to see that I've made a contribution. And frankly, I want to see that I made that contribution in a way that matters. Now, my good friend, Chris McChesney, loves to call this a sense of winning, winning overall. I'm winning in my life. I'm winning in my career. I'm winning at this goal at work. And people who have that sense find that it affects every aspect of their professional life, and Naresh, if you don't mind me stretching that a little bit, also seems to affect their personal lives. In other words, if you're a person in any role of influence today, if you could take the very things we've talked about, you would not only find that the people you lead and yourself produce higher results, but you would find you had become a leader of impact in their lives. You become that person that 10 years from now, they'll be telling stories about how much they grew and how much they learned under your leadership. So think of your goal as the thing you're trying to do, but think of it as the thing that earns you the right to maybe become a person of impact and in your own way, in your own circle, actually change the world. And that's how I think. And I hope a little bit of that, or maybe a lot, has come through what we've talked about today.
That's Jim Huling. Jim, thank you so much for joining us on the Work From Home Show. It's been a true pleasure. To all our listeners, check us out at workfromhomeshow.com. That's www.workfromhomeshow.com. Get on our mailing list, like us on social media, follow us on all the different platforms that you utilize on social media, Spotify, iTunes, leave us reviews. And until next week, keep on working from home.